And there we go. It's 12 o'clock. It's Monday, and welcome to week 30. Can you believe it? Of the 52 weeks of leadership. And may I say, just looking at all of you, you don't look a day over week 20. As hopefully you know by this point, this is our series every Monday at 12 o'clock. We try to bring you some unique perspectives on leadership, along with some tactical takeaways, all in a bite-sized 30-minute chunk. And thank you for joining us. If you're interested in the first 29 installments of the series, you can find them all for free on our website. Just Google 52 weeks of leadership or UB 52 weeks. That seems to work for me. And you can find the archives of all of the 52 weeks webinars we've done so far on a huge variety of topics. Thanks for joining us today. We've got a really special one for you today. Anthony DeSimone, or Tony as we call him, he is the director of our Center for Entrepreneurial Leadership, owner of You're the Expert Now, a very successful entrepreneur himself, host of the Healthy Business podcast, author of 3 books, specializes in helping business owners build a strong foundation for continued success. And he's going to share some thoughts with us with a very unique presentation coming up. And with that, I'll turn it over to him. Tony, take it away.
Thanks, Jim. You guys remember the good old days when everybody worked in an office and you could always, at least even if you didn't have an idea of how your boss was judging you, that default performance was, number of hours, the office hours. But then, of course, the pandemic happened and we were all relegated to Zoom. And once we were relegated to Zoom, a lot of leaders started asking that question: how do we effectively lead in a hybrid working environment? And to be quite honest, that question really should never have been asked. It's a question we should never have had to ask. And the reason why is because it shouldn't matter as a leader where we're working, remote or in the office. And really what this is exposed more than anything is a root problem to leadership. Now, when I was in the summer of 2010, I had LASIK surgery, and I had 20/20 vision, even better than 20/20 vision. I was loving life. But by the winter of 2010, I had the most severe dry eye that I could have ever expected, to the point where blinking was like sandpaper on my corneas. And I tried everything. I tried all behind the counter, any kind of over-the-counter type of prescriptions, everything. And nothing was working to help my dry eye. I got to the point where I was going to specialists, many different specialists, to the point where I had first name. They knew me by my first name because I was there so often. And my eyes were on fire. There was a point where the lights were so bright, no matter where I was, that I had to wear sunglasses at night because of the reflection in the mirrors. It was terrible. My eyes were on fire. And I thought to myself, after a year of this, if my eyes are in this much pain 1 year later, what's it going to be like in 2 years or 3 years? I was having a hard time just doing my normal everyday work. I couldn't imagine what it was going to be like. And over time, none of the specialists were going to tell me what I needed to hear. And that is that there is no cure for dry eye. That's what I learned. And so I realized, I got to make some changes here. Nobody's going to solve this but me. So I decided, you know what? I'm going to start to do something. I am going to start to track this. So I bought hygrometers. I bought a bunch of hygrometers, and I put them, and hygrometers are tools that measure the humidity in the air, because I figured humidity had to help or do something with my dry eye. So I had them everywhere, in every room in my house, in my office, in my car. And I put together a spreadsheet where I was, what I was doing, the humidity in the air, and I made a rating, an eye dryness rating from 1 to 10, 1 being not painful, 10 being very painful. And I started tracking it. In the first 3 days, I tracked every 20 minutes where I was, how I felt. And I also graphed it. And what I learned over time was that there were some activities that actually would increase my pain. And then there were other activities that would decrease my pain. And over time, as I continue to track and graph it, I realized that if I can combine several of those activities together, I can get underneath this red line, which meant that I was no longer feeling any eye dryness pain. And over time, I got better and better at it. And before you know it, my eyes felt better. I felt better. There was no cure for dry eye, but I solved the problem. And I solved the problem because of my background in accounting. And I knew that with data, when I collect it, there's information. And when you have information, you got power. You can measure, you can compare, you can recognize trends. It allows me to take action. And I can create new habits, new good habits, which changes my behaviors, creating positive results. That's what I do. Now, dry eye, who would have ever thought you can create data with dry eye? But now think about the data making machine in your company, in your department, all the people that you lead. There is an opportunity here to be a stronger, more powerful leader just by collecting data. The use of data, the use of numbers creates exceptional leadership. And how do I know that? Because I know something very important, that numbers are the universal language. Let me take you on a trip around the world to kind of prove my point. If I head over to Brazil, I don't know the language, but I do know the prices of all of those items that they're selling. Same thing in Russia. I don't know the language. I know how much those things cost. China, same thing. I know the numbers. Japan, same thing. I do not know what they're selling. I do know how much it costs. Then I go over to Egypt, same thing. I do not know the language, but I do know the numbers. Numbers are a universal language. Numbers allows everybody to communicate better. Whenever you have a situation where everybody knows the same language, you communicate better. Numbers equals communication, which equals effective leadership. So why, when we have all of this data, we have all of this opportunity to be great leaders, why do we default to the number of hours? Why do we allow that when doing something like that, what it does is it creates the potential for infighting, for backstabbing, for toxicity, cultural toxicity. We are better than that. We can be better leaders, and it doesn't have to be that difficult. Now, I was fortunate. When I was younger, I had a boss who was essentially a business coach, and he would coach me on a weekly basis. And when I first started, I was not a strong leader at all. I had a lot to learn. I still have a lot to learn. But I do recall going into his office early when I first started working for him. And at the time, I had a team of 6. And I would sit there and I would say to him, his name was Rick. I would say to Rick, this person is doing this and this person is complaining about this and not getting along with this person. And nobody seems to be working together. And Rick would just patiently listen. And then when I was done with all of my complaining, he would say to me, "So, Tony, what was it about your leadership that led to those results?" I said, no, you don't understand, Rick. See, this person doing this and this person doing that. And he would just sit there and say, what was it about your leadership that led to those results? Now, that was a very powerful statement, because what he was not trying to say is that it's my fault. what he was saying was that it was my fault, but he wasn't saying it because he wanted me to feel like there was blame. What he was saying is, Tony, hey, it's your fault, which means that you are in control of making the change. It wasn't about blame. It was about the fact that this is in your control. So take control. It was a very powerful moment. Now, how do you take control? What's the best way to take control? To use your numbers to help with your leadership, with performance management. Paul O'Neill was made the CEO of Alcoa back in 1987. Now, back in 1987, Alcoa was a disaster. They were losing a lot of money. They were losing millions in market share. They were struggling. And so they hired Paul O'Neill. And within 3 months, he had to speak in front of the shareholders meeting. This is a meeting where he's expected to talk for an hour in front of pretty much all of the brokerage firms and all of the shareholders that own the hundreds of millions of shares of Alcoa. So he got up there, and for the next hour, he talked about one thing and one thing only: safety. He said safety is the most important focus for Alcoa. And he explained the lost workday rate in Alcoa is 1.86. We work with hot metals, we work with sharp metals, we work with machinery. It's very dangerous. We have tens of thousands of employees, and the average employee loses 1.86 days per year because of injuries. And to be quite honest, he was saying to them, I want this to be the safest place because I care about the people. I care about the people. Now, after he was done talking about safety for an hour, there was a Q&A afterwards. And this is an opportunity for shareholders to ask questions. And so shareholders started asking questions. They're like, wait, what about all of the loss in market share? What about the fact that we're losing so much money? He said, well, we're going to fix that by making this the safest place in the world to work. And every time somebody would ask a question, he would always defer it back to, we're going to improve safety. Now, this was 1987, really before cell phones. So after the Q&A, several of the representatives of the brokerage houses ran out of the room, called the brokerage house, and told them, sell all the stock. This guy is nuts. 1 year later, Alcoa had the highest profits that it has ever recorded. 1 year later, and by the time he retired in 2001, the workday rate was down to 0.07. He cared about those people. The employees understood that, and they worked for him. Now, he did this also. He said, we're going to create KPIs. We're going to create key performance indicators, and we're going to make sure that they all are congruent with safety. That's how you're going to be measured. That's how your performance is going to be measured. And now what he did is he challenged all of the leaders that we want to make sure that you are judging your team based on KPIs that are congruent with safety. Now, how do you make a great KPI? How do you make a great key performance indicator? He said that it's got to be under the employee's control. They need to be measurable by the employee. They need to be leading indicators, and they need to be congruent with company goals and strategy. Those are the 4 keys to effective KPIs. And he understood that safety was the top KPI, that if we could focus on that, we could fix a lot of these other problems that really weren't problems, they're symptoms. Safety equals trust, which equals results, which equals true leadership. So back to the question, how do we effectively lead in a hybrid working environment? Well, it's it's not that hard because you can find data in anything. That's where we start. You can find data in anything. You can find the data with all of the people. Everybody that you lead are creating some form of data. Numbers are the universal language. What does that mean? That means that if you get everybody to communicate together, everybody to speak the same language, they're going to communicate so much better together. What is it about your leadership that is leading to your results? Remember, everything you're doing as a leader, it's your fault. You're in control. It's your fault. You're in control. So you want to always remind yourself that whatever is happening in your department, that you need to look in the mirror first. You are in control. And then you want to focus on KPIs that define performance. Everybody should be judged based upon some form of KPIs. Now, a lot of times you don't get them right at first, the right ones, but the ones that you can think of that are going to allow you to be able to track your team using numbers that are black and white, it's going to be very helpful in your leadership. And then you got to set and track those results expected for yourself and your team. So how do you get started with something like that? Well, first of all, don't wait for your boss to figure out how to lead with numbers. This is your opportunity to get started. Don't let any more time pass. And you start with yourself. Start with yourself. List all your major tasks and expectations, because this is how you create this kind of leadership with numbers. Start with creating your own. List all your major tasks and expectations, everything that is part of your job description. Determine the acceptable range for each of those tasks. Begin tracking your numbers on a spreadsheet and then share it with your boss. If you don't know how your boss is judging you, then create a list of all of the things that you do. Create a acceptable range of those items, and then share it with your boss and say, this is how I believe I should be judged. Do you agree with me? And if your boss agrees with you, great. Now you have something. If your boss doesn't, your boss will probably edit it, and then you'll have something. So you start with you, and then you do that with your team. And if you have that, now you have an easier way to lead your team. It's black and white. You have KPIs that are congruent to the company, and it creates greater accountability throughout your whole company. Now, I've created a spreadsheet where I do this with my team, with people I work with, and I'm more than happy to share this. And if this is something that you're interested in, all you got to do is reach out to the Chloe team, and I'll be happy to share it with whomever would like it. But basically, it's very simple. It's just breaking out all of the tasks, all of the activities that you think should be measured, creating a target, and then tracking it on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis, whatever makes sense. And that's it. And then just having a one-on-one update meetings with those people to make sure that you're on the same page. Now, typically, if you've never done this before, you don't usually get all the right KPIs correct the first time, and you don't have to. The ones that you think are the right ones, that's what you start with. And then you continue to let it evolve into what it becomes. And before you know it, you have a really good way to track your team. They know how they're doing. They know their performance even before you tell them, and everybody's happier. So I suggest that you get started right away. That, ladies and gentlemen, is Leadership with Numbers. Thank you.
Thanks, Tony. Great presentation, a great message. I'm especially a fan of that idea that if something's going wrong, well, if you're the leader, you've got to take some ownership from it. You've got to take some responsibility. That's the hardest thing to do, is look at yourself and go, okay, how did I cause this? Love that. We've got a couple of questions coming in through the chat. If you had time, And for some reason, my chat window just collapsed, so I don't have access. Oh, there we go. Gayatri asks whether you have any tips. How do we identify what really are the critical KPIs in an organization or a team?
Yeah, I think what you need to do is start with the ones that you think are critical KPIs, because a lot of times what I've learned is that you don't usually get it right the first time, because you want them to be leading indicators. Like, for instance, if you were running a sales team, the dollar value of sales is a lagging indicator. That's history. That's already happened. What you want to do is, perhaps for a sales team, you want to focus on leading indicators like the number of contacts they have, the number of leads they have, things like that, the number of touches they have with their potential customers. Those are more leading KPIs, but usually you find something in the middle. But what I've learned is that as you continue to collect that data, you realize, you know what? There's something that's more leading than what we're tracking. Let's start tracking that. And then ultimately, over time, you get to the right one.
Thanks. Jacqueline asked a really good question, because I had a boss who loved these. How do you avoid more subjective KPIs?
My goodness. Yeah, that's one where you need to communicate how you feel about that. If you are, because remember, what does it need to do? It needs to be tracked. It needs to be able to be measured by the person. If that's hard to do, then you need to communicate that with your boss so that they understand that, maybe it's not the right KPI to measure. And if they have some examples, I would be more than happy to go a little deeper on that one.
We'll see if anything comes up in the chat. I've got one here. Have you ever run into a situation where the numbers in a KPI could be misleading?
The numbers in a KPI can be misleading. Well, yeah, you know what? I think that if you're just focusing on certain one, just if you're not focusing enough on the KPIs that all encompass your performance, and you just focus on one visual KPI, like say all we're doing is focusing on sales and nothing else matters. Well, that's probably not a good way to judge somebody's performance, because then maybe they don't care about the service of the customer, and maybe they don't care about some of the other things. Southwest had or it wasn't Southwest, it was, I believe, United had a famous one where the CEO was getting very upset at the fact that a lot of the planes weren't taking off on time. And he said, if the plane doesn't take off on time, I want you to call me. I'm giving you my cell phone, and you have to explain why. Well, guess what? The plane started taking off on time, but all of a sudden, what'd they have? Lost baggage, damaged baggage, all this other stuff. So you want to make sure you have the proper group of KPIs.
That's a great example. Prasanna Kumar asks, you said, does subordinates decide the KPIs? Do the boss decide it? Are they different for both? Who do you think should be the one picking it, or is it a collaborative process?
It is collaborative. I think that you should, if your boss isn't in the habit of doing that, you should create it. You should share it with your boss and say, these are the things that I feel are what we should use to judge me. Do you agree or disagree? And your boss will edit it. Your boss is probably going to be better, if they're not in the habit of doing this, to edit what you created versus creating it themselves. And then you start there, and then build your team something similar for your team.
Martha asks, if I'm just taking over a new team that I have limited information about, are there any broad generic KPIs that I should always ask for?
I would, if I were doing that, I would start with asking them what they believe they should be judged on, and start there. Because if they're brand new, or if they're new to you, and you're not really sure, I would start there. But then, you know what I would do? I would start tracking them, but not put anything behind it. No teeth behind it. Just start tracking it. And as I understood the business better, or the role better, then I would be able to pick up on whether or not those are the right ones. And then we would build something from there.
Thank you, Tony. And looking at the chat, that's all of the questions I see. So I'm going to talk for 30 seconds just to see if any more come in, and then we'll let you go a little bit early. But I will use this time to thank everybody for coming. And remind you that this is week 30, the 52 weeks of leadership. All of the past ones are on the web. Just Google 52 weeks of leadership or 52 weeks UB, and you'll see us pop up there. Coming up, we've got a really special presentation next Monday with Scott Friedman, the venture capitalist, investor, author of over 7 books. He's our entrepreneur in residence, one of them here at the School of Management, and a lawyer, a partner at Lippis Mathias. He was going to be talking about how the world isn't flat, it's complex, and how you can deal with that as a leader. Seeing no more questions coming in, Tony, thank you for a great job and a great presentation. I see some positive feedback coming in through the chat, and thank you for the work you're doing to help the UB Alumni Association today that you stepped away from to help us out. So thank you everyone for attending. Have a great week. We'll see you right here, same place, same time next Monday.
Thanks, guys. It was fun. Take care.